History isn't shaped by monsters. It's shaped by moments. Quiet moments, where someone could have said no, and didn't. Before the headlines, before the trials, before the name Epstein meant anything at all, there was a window. A narrow one. And tonight, we're opening it. What if Jeffrey Epstein was stopped before it was too late? Jeffrey Epstein didn't begin as a symbol of scandal. He wasn't famous, he wasn't powerful, he wasn't feared. He was invisible. A man who understood something most people don't. Power doesn't need noise. It needs access. Access to money, access to people, access to silence. And for years, that silence held. By the time Epstein's name entered public awareness, the damage had already been done. Investigations stalled, warnings were softened, decisions were delayed. Not because no one noticed, but because systems hesitate when the cost of action feels inconvenient. And that's where this story changes. Because in another version of events, someone doesn't hesitate. Imagine this. An early complaint doesn't get buried in paperwork, a report isn't downgraded to a misunderstanding. A phone call isn't ignored because the caller feels small. Instead, one official decides to push forward. One editor decides to publish, one institution decides to act. Not heroically, just correctly. And that choice fractures everything. In this alternate timeline, Epstein doesn't gain momentum. He doesn't gain insulation and myth. Because power feeds on delay, and delay no longer exists. Financial doors quietly close, social invitations stop arriving. The illusion of untouchability collapses early. And without that illusion, there is no empire to hide behind. Here's the uncomfortable truth. This story was never about one man. It was about loopholes, about prestige acting as protection. About how often we mistake confidence for credibility. In this version of events, institutions do what they're designed to do. Not what's easiest. And that alone changes everything. Think about how many lives are shaped by what doesn't happen. The meeting that never occurs, the warning that lands in time, the pattern that's interrupted early. Justice, in this version isn't dramatic. It's quiet, procedural, and boring. And that's exactly why it works. But here's the twist. Stopping Epstein early doesn't create closure, it creates discomfort, because it forces a bigger question. If this could have been stopped, how many others depend on the same silence? And suddenly, the spotlight isn't on one name. It's on the structure itself. In this alternate cut, not everyone is relieved. Some people are embarrassed, some careers stall, and some institutions face scrutiny they weren't prepared for. But the price of early accountability is always cheaper than the cost of delayed truth. And this time, the bill gets paid up front. Epstein doesn't become a symbol, he becomes a case file. A warning instead of a legend, a footnote instead of a saga. And history quietly turns a corner most people never notice. Because the greatest tragedies aren't the ones we stop too late, they're the ones we convince ourselves were unstoppable. In this version of events, there is no cultural shockwave, no endless speculation, no unanswered questions echoing for years. Just a system that worked. Once, when it mattered most. And maybe that's the most unsettling part. So now the question isn't about Epstein, it's about us. What happens the next time the warning signs appear quietly? When the truth arrives early, but inconveniently? Because history doesn't ask loudly, it asks once, softly. And then it waits. What do you think would have happened if that moment had gone differently?